Hello, okay, so this is lesson 2 on War Photographer. And this one should be pretty straightforward. I think I've got to grips with it now. So if we hide that. Okay, so first thing I need us to do is to just recap the keywords from the last lesson. So ensure you can remember what they are and write yourself down a definition. So just pause now. And if you have forgotten any of them, then again, just kind of teach yourself, use Google, and then hopefully we can catch up. So pause now. And even if you think you can remember them in your head, just get them down anyway, and just really reinforce that into the back of your mind. Okay, now you've done that, pause again. All right, but this time I want you to read War Photographer. Okay, I'll send it out to you, or if you've got your anthologies, it should be in there. And after you've read it, find or make your own interpretation before unpausing the video. Okay, so make sure you are, make sure you're getting to grips with it. You've got a good solid knowledge in your own mind of kind of what it's about, why Duffy might have written this poem, and then you can unpause. So pause now. All right, and then the last thing then, just another pause job in a second, is just a couple of more keywords. So hopefully we know these ones already, especially the bottom one. The first one is sibilance. So we looked at assonance last lesson, which is similar to alliteration in terms of the fact that it's repeating a sound. Now, sibilance is the same, except this time it's the repetition of the S or the Z sound. And then connotations as well. We should know this one by now, but again, if not, just pause it here, have a quick Google. If you do know them anyway, just write these words out and their definitions, and maybe include an example as well, just again, so you can really know what's going on with that. Okay, so the poem. The clue's in the title about what it's about. All right, it's about a war photographer, but it's not just about a war photographer. We've got to look at, is it about the effects on the war photographer, maybe the effects of war on him, or maybe the effects of war of people who are caught up in conflict, or even the effects on kind of the public, the people who are actually seeing these photos. And is it trying to make sense of war and humanity? When we go through the poem, we'll kind of look at that as well. And could it also be a criticism of the public attitude? Yeah, we saw in the bottom line, it says that they do not care. So again, that's something we'll explore. So we do this with all the poems. Yeah, there's not just one meaning, there's not just one interpretation. It's just how you kind of respond to the poem and what it does for you. Which kind of links to the context. So this was written in the 1980s, and it refers to a few conflicts which are either recent, when Duffy was writing this, or kind of ongoing. But we can find relevance in today's society as well. So someone like you who's reading this poem in 2020, the meaning of text can kind of carry on into different generations. So it's up to you to kind of decide how this is relevant to you in your life right now. So we'll go into the poem now then. So this is it. We won't do structure just yet, but as you can see, it's pretty tight. So we'll have a look at why Duffy may have chosen to do that. But we'll start off with language and kind of what's going on. So this is your first stanza. And it starts off with, in his dark room, he is finally alone. Now, if you're not sure what a dark room is, back in the day, we didn't just have phones. All your pictures are kind of done digitally now, but you used to have to kind of take your film from your camera to a shop. They'd take a few days. They'd develop them in one of these dark rooms. and then the photos would kind of come out. And I suppose the importance of that is because this photographer actually has these photos in his hands, and we could say that that's a little bit different to viewing them on a screen or in a newspaper or something like that. It's kind of more personal. So I'm sure your parents will probably have some photographs from back in the day, and it's more personal when you're holding that photograph. For example, I was cleaning some rooms out the other day, came across some old photographs, and one of them had my dad in it, sporting a fantastic mustache, which unfortunately I don't think I developed that gene. But it kind of having it there in your hand, that physical photo, kind of makes it more personal to you. So that's something to think about in this poem, that I think these photographs are so personal to this photographer, and there's a real sense of he wants everyone else to feel kind of that pain that's in his hands, and he doesn't. So that's your dark room. In his dark room, he's finally alone with spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. So we've got that sibilance there. So we know that's the repetition of this S sound. And again, we think about sound. Is it sound effect? Is it emphasis? I think in this case, it's the emphasis. And is it kind of emphasizing this suffering, and kind of really straight away trying to make us see what is actually going on in these war zones. And the fact that they're set out in ordered rows, and that kind of gives us this imagery of, if you think of war graves, real kind of ordered rows that they kind of put them in. You'll have seen them on the internet or TV or something like that, with the crosses all in a rows. And it almost kind of, if you think of the chaos and the madness of war, and we look at these graves on reflection of that, and it kind of tries to establish order to this madness. Now, where once we had these awful battlefields with all this death and madness and things like that, it's they're now kind of set out in these ordered rows. So is that being reflected in the photos, kind of being set out in ordered rows, maybe trying to establish some order to this chaos that the war photographer has seen? And I've circled these O's. All right, so remember, assonance is your repetition of a vowel sound. So alone, rose, only, glows. You've got that O sound, and we kind of attach that idea to kind of sadness or melancholy, that O sound. It's kind of a sound you make a sound you make to reflect sadness. And so I think that's kind of there potentially to kind of reflect that kind of somber mood that this war photographer's feeling alone in his dark room. The only light is red and softly glows, as though this were a church and he a priest preparing to intone a mass. So if you think about a priest, their mission is to kind of spread the word of God, of Jesus, and kind of make people see the light. And so I think this is kind of a clue of what this poem's about. And the war photographer is kind of being prepared is being compared to a priest preparing to intone a mass. It's like it's this war photographer's mission to make people see kind of the madness that's going on in the world. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh, all flesh is grass. So that last little bit there is a quote from the Bible. And so if you think about grass, yeah, it grows, it dies. It's fragile, so life kind of comes and goes. Flesh, humans, they're just kind of that part of nature. They will come and they'll go, and so and could we say humans are treating humans like this is the case? Yeah, again, we think about that dehumanization from the last poem we looked at, and again, war is kind of like that. We take people take people's lives, not knowing kind of anything about them or anything like that, and that life almost becomes meaningless. And we've got to think to ourselves, kind of, is that okay? Should that be the case? And so if you look at these kind of three places, these are all areas affected by conflict in the 70s and 80s. And I think maybe the reason they're in that order could be one of the key themes to this poem, is that this is happening everywhere. All right, so we've got Belfast, yeah, it's kind of close to home, and the further we get away, so all the same things going on all across the world, the further away you get. And again, I suppose we can link that to, we can kind of have an understanding now. You see things, when you see things in the paper or online and on the TV, maybe a terrorist attack happens or something like that. If it happens kind of near us, either in the United Kingdom, maybe France, somewhere close, we share that pain, and we kind of feel that pain. People respond in different ways. People try and show solidarity. They'll change the Facebook pictures to a flag of France or something like that, and that's because we kind of feel it. And further away you go, we don't have that same emotional connection. I think possibly one of the points of this poem is that all life is the same, but actually from a psychological point of view, we don't actually feel that same sorrow when something happens in different cultures that aren't the same as ours. And we've got to think to ourselves, of, is that right? Is that the case? We could argue it's just natural. But at the end of the day, I suppose people are people wherever they're from, whatever culture. And so when we see kind of pictures of war-torn countries or something like that, it shouldn't really matter where it is. It should still evoke the same sadness as if it was happening at home or next door or something like that. Okay, so second stanza, he has a job to do. I suppose that's quite, he has a job to do, it's his calling. It's the way that sentence is constructed, it's focused, and that's his call, and that's what he wants to do. His job is to kind of take these pictures and make people see what's going on and try to evoke this reaction. So maybe one day things like this could stop, but who knows? Solutions slop in trays beneath his hands. We've got onomatopoeia there, slop. It's almost like you can kind of hear the photos in this solution, but I mean, I haven't put anything on there. There's no point in us kind of picking out certain features unless you can say something about them. If you pick out a simile and you just say it's a simile, that's not going to get you very many marks. We need to kind of interpret that. So I mean, if you can kind of think of an interpretation of this onomatopoeia and send that over, that'd be really great. Beneath his hands, which did not tremble then, though seem to now. So almost he was kind of so completely focused on his job and his mission that he was kind of immune to the horrors of war while he's focused on his job. And then kind of that, when he's come out of that situation, maybe all that kind of trauma is hitting home and his hands are trembling there. Again, we've got the caesura here then, so it kind of stops and it just says rural England. All right, so again, this is kind of the contrast. So from where he's been, all right, to where he is now. Home again to ordinary pain, which simple weather can dispel. I think this kind of 4 lines of this stanza really, really powerful. Probably one of my favorite parts of the whole anthology. Home again to ordinary pain. So we think about what is this ordinary pain which simple weather can dispel, and we think about it and we go about our day-to-day lives in a relatively safe country, but yet it's still not easy, is it? We face trials, tribulations, we get sad about things, we go through heartbreak, we kind of suffer loss. So I mean, we do go through pain, but the fact that she's calling it ordinary pain, it kind of makes us reflect and kind of think about how other people have it worse than us. So sometimes our pain can be dispelled by simple weather. All right, the sun comes out, we can go out, we can enjoy it, we can make ourselves feel better. And it really kind of brings home this next two lines: to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of running children in a nightmare heat. And so we really get that awful imagery of what is happening in these countries. Yeah, we're free to kind of run around. Our children can run around, play, have fun. And in other places, fields are exploding. Children are dying. And it's really emotive. Couple of lines, that one. So horrifying imagery. And running children as well, that should have connotations of innocence, of joy, and yet actually that innocence is being taken away from a lot of people. And so I thought, here is what Duffy's creating here. Is it similar to what the war photographer is trying to do? All right, the war photographer is trying to show people his pictures, trying to make them see. I think through the words, Duffy's doing that as well. It's kind of opening our eyes to what's happening, and kind of trying to make us feel this empathy for people in different countries who are a lot less fortunate through war. Something is happening. A stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes, a half-formed ghost. So here, I mean, if we look at it literally, the photo is developing. It's slowly kind of coming together on the page, on the photograph. So literally, it kind of looks like a ghost as this photo is developing. But suppose we can look at it figuratively as well. Perhaps the person in this photo is kind of very close to death, maybe not quite gone yet, and therefore being kind of a half-formed ghost, which is quite haunting in itself, actually. But to the photographer, he remembers the cries of this man's wife, how he sought approval without words to do what someone must, and how the blood stained into foreign dust. So again, I suppose you could link this back to the poem in the last lesson, Remains, this haunting memories that this war photographer has had to kind of endure to do his job. The blood stained into foreign dust, that lasting impression of this war. Kind of similar to the line in Remains about the blood shadow that he has to walk over. And so we get to the last stanza. 100 agonies in black and white, from which his editor will pick out 5 or 6 for Sunday's supplement. I think that this line, or these few lines, kind of sum up really the photographer's or Duffy's ideas that these photos aren't as personal to everyone else who aren't there, who are enjoying normal lives, as they are to the photographer. And I think the fact Duffy calls these photos agonies kind of reflects the photographer's feelings. He kind of sees these photos as agonies, whereas kind of the public or the editor don't see it that way. They kind of see them as photos. All right, they're not as personal to them. And you'll notice that there's no rhythm to this bit. Yeah, 100 agonies in black and white, from which his editor will pick out 5 or 6 for Sunday's supplement. It's just very matter of fact. It's very impassive. Like, there's no kind of care, no emotion in this process for where the editor is picking them out. And perhaps the choice of supplement, I mean, a supplement would be kind of a pull-out, something you'd take out of the newspaper. So not even the main body of that newspaper are these photos going to kind of be published in. So, I mean, does that kind of again show the attitudes that it's not front page worthy, it's not in the actual body of the newspaper? Some people might not actually see these. Again, might not be the case, but it's an interpretation that you're welcome to use. So we go from the editor having this really impassive attitude, and then we go to the readers. The reader's eyeballs prick with tears between the bath and pre-lunch beers. So it's a temporary sadness. These people see the photographs. It says their eyeballs prick with tears, so we kind of recognize that this is a sad story, and what is going on in these countries is sad. But yeah, that's just a kind of a small chunk. Yeah, they have the bath, they see that, and then they go out for pre-lunch beers. They just carry on with their normal daily lives, their easy lives perhaps, and kind of forget about that. So turning a blind eye, is it, do we do it on purpose? Do we kind of ignore these things on purpose to make us feel better, as some sort of coping mechanism perhaps? Who knows? And again, like from what I said earlier in the first stanza, I mean, this is still relevant today, the fact that we kind of, I suppose it depends where something happens, kind of controls the degree of sympathy we feel, and how it affects us emotionally. And again, it's that kind of moral question: is that right? We don't know. And then the last bit then, so we come full circle almost. From the aeroplane, he stares impassively at where he earns his living, and they do not care. I think this is the photographer kind of, he's been back, he's developed his photos, and now he's going back out to do it again. So he's kind of staring, I think, anyway, he's possibly staring at England, the United Kingdom, and he stares impassively at it, like he's almost disappointed that they don't care because they don't see what he sees. And is he kind of reflecting on his mission? Does he have resentment towards it? Is he giving up? We don't know. But these are all the ideas that you can kind of think of, interpret, and write down in your responses. So that was basically quite a bit of language analysis, but we don't just analyze the language. It's good to look at the structure as well, whether it be form, or we look at here the rhyme scheme and the stanza length. So we see it's a strict rhyme scheme. All right, you can probably look and pick out those rhymes that go all the way down, and it's a strict stanza length. But just as I said with language, yeah, there's no use in just identifying it. You're not really going to get any marks for saying this has a strict rhyme scheme, this has a strict stanza length. You just won't get the marks. You need to add kind of meaning to it, or interpretation. And again, like I said, and I'll always say it, we don't have to know exactly what the writer intended. We're purely speculating. That's all we're doing. So we could interpret it this way. So is the war photographer perhaps, or is Duffy kind of structuring it like that to reflect that he's trying to find order in the madness, like what we talked about with the ordered rows and the war graves. Is he trying to make sense of it? Another interpretation as well that I stole off someone else actually is that 4x6 was a common photograph size. All right, so we've got 4 stanzas of 6 lines. And so we think, yeah, okay, that's great. We can pick that out. But what is it? What does it mean? Why might she have done that? And so again, could it link to what we said earlier about Duffy sharing the same motive as the photographer? And almost this poem is trying to reflect an actual photograph. That this poem is something we can see and almost kind of be saddened by and maybe change our opinions. And the ending then, so again with structure, just like when we look at structure in the language paper and we talk about the beginning, the middle of it and the end, where things are and why, we do the same here. So the ending shows is repeating the process. It's a cyclical ending. Yeah, we start with the photographer getting back, developing the photos, and then in the bottom 2 lines here, he's going back to repeat that process. And again, we think about what could that represent. So perhaps it could be showing that these attitudes will always be the case, that this is just going to be a never-ending cycle. And again, when we kind of think about when this was written in the 80s, we think about have these attitudes changed over the last 40 odd years? Probably not. So again, that's something you can use. Okay, so that pretty much brings us to the end. You don't have to listen to me talk anymore, but there are some tasks for you to do. They're on here, so you're going to pick out a quotation from each stanza that you feel is particularly effective. Write down how each quotation makes you think and feel and why. And again, I just want to emphasize that you. How does it make you think and feel? So yes, you can use some of my interpretations, but it'd be even better if you can kind of come up with your own. Remember, literature is your personal response. Also, please go further. All right, don't just listen to me. I'm just one person. There's loads and loads of different interpretations of the same things. So use Google, use YouTube, and research this poem a bit further. Find some interpretations that I haven't included, yeah, or create your own. Write those down. And then your last one is your written response. I'd like you to send over to me, please. How does Duffy present ideas about the effects of conflict in war photography? Again, in the next lesson, we'll be doing some comparison skills. We won't be looking at a new poem. We'll just be looking at the 2 we've already done. But for the sake of this one, please kind of answer in the same way you have done to unseen poetry, and we can kind of tie off those skills. Use that document that I showed you in the last video and that I've sent out to help you. Okay, enjoy doing it and enjoy the rest of your day.